Howdy everyone, this is Grakef. So, got a very exciting video for you. We're going to orbit. So I finally got a successful orbiter. I'm going to go through the process of building one for you. We're going to take a look at it here as it loads up in the vehicle assembly building, my little Orbiter 1, and then we'll go through the process of building it ourselves. Alright, so this is the Orbiter 1 I built. Here we can see it's all put together, and so let's go through ahead and build this ourselves. So the first thing you're going to want to start off with is the avionics procedural. What I did is I built this into the cone of the rocket. So let's go here. I like the peaked one, seems to be the most efficient. And what you have to do is you got to make it really long, and then you'll be able to put it to a point, and then you can adjust your there, and then come. Oh, excuse me. You also want to make this an upper stage, because we're only going to need just a little bit over 3 tons, and then we can adjust the length. Then you'll end up here. If you're doing 300 millimeters, it'll be about 5 meters that you have to have. If you do it at 400, then it's a little bit shorter. It's about 3 meters. So, and if you're going for 100%, then 100% is roughly almost 5 meters, it looks like. Yeah, somewhere around 5 meters for 100%. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need is I use the Aerojet, because I have unlocked that one. The Aerojet is, it's not quite 3, but it's not quite, see if you do 3, there's a tiny little gap there. It's like 3.25 or something. So if you're looking for perfection, I believe I did 4 on mine, and that was close enough. Because you can also stick some other stuff down here. So let's go ahead, and I chose the Sputnik antenna. You can use whichever antennas you want to use. So there you go. And that is our first stage. I also went ahead, you don't need to do this, but it makes it a little bit easier, I felt, for the timing. So I went ahead and put this to 10 seconds. So I know when I get to the apoapse, I need to hit the space bar 5 seconds before apoapse, and then it will do its bit and balance out the shot. You could adjust this down. I didn't need all this fuel, so you could, if you're having problems getting to orbit, you don't need this much fuel. Probably could have done with about half of this fuel. All right. Then next up, we're going to need a decoupler. Let's see here if I can click the wrong spot. A decoupler. And I just made mine 300. It was easier than going back and forth and trying to make it look nice. And then we need some tanks. Okay. So I have unlocked 2 tanks now. And I went ahead and made it another cone, smooth cone. Again, I did peak and made the top 300, made the bottom 1.5. I think I did 4. Maybe I did 4. Maybe I did 3. We'll have to play around with it and see what I got tooled. And then I have unlocked, finally, and this was kind of key to all of this. I don't know how to do this without this engine. If you know of any other good mid-stage engines, please let me know in the comments, because this set my career back quite a bit waiting for this engine. So you need the AJ10 series engine. You only have to unlock the AJ1037. The AJ1027 that's in the Aerobee line is not enough. So make this a high pressure tank. I don't know if that's entirely necessary, but I've always been making my upper stages high pressure tanks. So okay, and this is not long enough, so we do need to make this longer. So 2 meters. I got 2 meters tool. I think that's the right one. Okay, so now we've got our first stage, and we got the rocket of our second stage. We're going to add a little bit more stuff to this second stage, though. So for simplicity's sake, I just used this little Stratus Roundify tank. It's way too big, and you probably could get away with using a smaller procedural tank, or you could even add the HTP to this upper level. So now we need to set up our controls. I just went with the little 45s. They're more than enough for keeping this all going in the right direction. And I just came under here, did 4-way symmetry, kind of got them out here a little ways. Turn off the, there we go. You kind of have to build your own. And so then once you got those there, you can get out the rotate tool. Turn back on, symmetry, turn them flat. There it goes. Turn this one flat. And just for the sake of making it look nice, turn off symmetry and just pull them out just a little. If you're having a hard time seeing what you're doing when you're pulling it out, look at this one over here. That will make it easier. So you can kind of see what that one's doing. And then the same with this one. Look over here. And you can kind of pull it out there. There you go. And I just went, you don't need to pull this one out, but it makes them all look just that much better. Come on. I think my computer's thinking there. Sometimes you have to click on something else and then click on that thing you want to move. There you go. Okay. And then if you want to, you can even kind of tuck them together. Nope. There we go. Okay. I'm just going to roll with it. Okay. And I forgot to go ahead. Let's change these all to HTP. I bet you could do this with just nitrogen if you haven't unlocked HTP. I've unlocked nitrous oxide, but I'm currently working on the early flight controls, which has hydrazine, because I'm really tired of building thruster blocks. And so even though I don't necessarily think I need the hydrazine, I'm going to get it for unlocking the thruster blocks. So it's one of those I'm not too worried about it. And so there you go. If this is really all the controls you need, if you want, you can change this one and rotate it this way. Whoa. You're not really going to use lateral control in this particular thing. We're just looking for roll control. So we can use that thruster as a thrust to help with ullage and stuff like that. So, okay. So there we go. We have, we can add some HTP here. What I did is I did 10. It was way overkill. And then I filled the rest of the tank with the fuel for the AJ-10. So that's now our first stage and our second stage. And that's all together. Okay, next stage down, I went ahead and went with a Interstage. When you're setting up your Interstage, make sure you attach. Don't attach to any of those other nodes, and don't attach down here. Attach up to that node. Oh, that's right up top. And then set your height however you would like it. I went ahead and just set it just a little bit so it kind of looks realistic there, that the rocket is not sitting on here. You'd imagine that this is kind of all strutted and barred in. And then I made my base. I'm going to go with 2 meters, and then the upper stage there is 1.5, so we'll go down to 1.5, and then just go ahead and add your extra height here to cover up that engine. And it was about 1.3, I think, is what it came out to be. So that'll cover up your engine, your RC controls, and keep them all safe where you're going up, and keep you all efficient as well. So, did I go down enough? Yeah, maybe it was 1 point. Let's get computer keeps thinking. I've been playing all day trying to get this figured out. We only need one node. The downside to doing one node, yeah, it is 1.3, is that when this comes off, it does make it a little bit harder to get it off. It does come off a little less clean. So if you're having problems, you can go ahead and change it to 2 nodes, and the Interstage may come off more cleanly for you. Okay. And then up next, now we need to work on our third and final stage. And let's make sure. Check your staging here. So we've got our Interstage. When that comes off, we're going to fire all our RCS, and then we'll be able to fire that engine. And then when we fire, well, yeah, we'll leave that separate. That way we can decouple. Got all spin stabilized, and that. Okay. So we have. And this is a good moment to check here as well. Get the right part. Check your weight right here. If you find that you're adding enough features or something and you're over this 3 tons, you need to come up here and do some adjustment, because it's currently set to 3 tons. So adjust as necessary. If you are over 3 tons, I would suggest taking back something. You don't necessarily have to take everything under the moon. I'm going to go ahead. I have a little bit of leeway here, really close. I'm going to take away just a little bit of fuel, and I'm going to add some science, because I didn't, when I did this first, I didn't have any science. So we're going to add just a little bit of science to this upper stage. We're just going to hide them under here. And just keep an eye on our weight here and make sure we stay under that 3 tons. Okay, so we got a thermometer, a Geiger. Let's go ahead and put this one too. One of these you have to bring back, and I keep forgetting which one it is. I think it is this one, the ion mass spectrometer. If that's the case, we won't worry about it, because I'm not going to add parachutes. Okay, so there we go. That's a completed first and second stage. So on to the third stage, which is just a bunch of fuel tanks and a rocket engine. Okay, so I went with 2 meters. I made this tank 11. Let's put that back to 2 meters. Okay, so we got that one, and I found that this helps a bunch as far as your efficiency. Take another tank, put it down here. First, before you get started, change it to a cone, preferably smooth cone, and we'll make it peak 1. Make the top your base size and then take this about 3 meters. And then you're going to make this bottom whatever your engine size is. This adds a little bit of boat tail to the end of your rocket, and it makes it so much more efficient. I'll show you in FAR here in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to use the LR series of engines. I'm going to use the LR101 in conjunction with the LR89. I tried it a little bit with the 79. I tried with the 105 and doing 89 boosters. This seemed to work the best for me. So, okay, we're going to stick the engine down here. And I need a little bit more room for my veneer engines. Veneer? Whatever. Vernier. I'm butchering the word tonight. So there you go. I need those. So we're going to add 2 of these. And that's basically it for the bottom of the 3rd stage. So if you run into problems with your like if you're like me, you like to go 4 times X speed and some other things, then you can add some aerodynamics here at the bottom. And what I just did is I took some winglets and went like this, and that was more than enough to keep it stable as I'm going 4x speed. Let's see here. Check our staging. Something's not quite... Oh, I haven't added fuel to these tanks. You'll notice that there's 2 ratings for the kerosene fuel. The Vernier engines use a more precise. So they're asking for the same ratio, but the one engine's tuned to 3.82, the other one's tuned to 3.81. I went ahead and clicked here and did the bottom one. That's going to give you a little bit more liquid oxygen. So that way the kerosene is the fuel that shows up on the screen. So you know when you're running low on fuel. If you click the other one, you'll end up with just a little bit of kerosene when you finish off. And there's also another thing that you can run into. So I had on a couple of launches, depending on how much thrust vectoring these did and how everything went, I ran out of liquid oxygen. So if you find yourself in that situation, you can build a procedural tank, or what I did is I just took these and put 2 of them down here. And you really don't need 2. You just need and a little bit. But for the sake of balance, just go ahead and put 2. And then I went in here to show UI and went liquid oxygen, add, update. And then you have enough. So if you find that you're left with just a little bit of kerosene, this is a good solution that I found to fix that. I'm going to try this launch without those and see if that happens again, because it didn't happen every time. And I had been playing with the difference between the LR79, the 105, and all of those have different ratios of kerosene to liquid oxygen. So if you're not checking your tanks, then you'll end up with the wrong ratio, and your rocket's going to be less efficient. So there you go. This rocket will get you into orbit, and it has worked consistently for me. It is a little low. All the YouTubers I watched said that you need to be at 9,000. I think that you can do it with 8,500. You just have to be, you need to let MechJeb do its job and do the gravity turn. If you're trying to do it by hand, you're going to have a lot of problems. There's a lot of places to pick up inefficiencies. And make sure your rocket is aerodynamic. I think that's a lot of issues with people's rocket builds, is they don't go check in FAR and come and look here at the transonic numbers. So you see we have a very efficient rocket here at 0.4. So, and we can look at our cross section here. The biggest issue is that transition from 0.21 or 0.15 meters down to 2 meters. That's where we pick up a lot of cross section. But this boat tail adds a lot. So watch if we change this to a normal tank. Instead of necking down to 1.25, let's go to 2 meters. Notice that that changes it quite a bit, and we end up with a lot of noise down here. If you don't need the vernier engines, or you want to, crop them in, if you go here to like 1.0, oop, I went past it. There's like a sweet spot in here. Yeah, 1.2 seems to be the sweet spot with this particular engine. You can pick up a lot of efficiency, and that will just make your rocket fly that much better. So take some time and build a nice elongated rocket, and you won't need as much delta V. Also, if your rocket flies better, these little winglets add a lot of inefficiency as well. So if you can build your rocket to fly a little better, and you don't need those, or maybe you just need them in the one direction. So if you're finding that your rocket wants to tip this way, just put them on there, and that'll help that way. Or if you find your rocket is wanting to slip side to side, then put them on there instead of doing all 4 directions. So that will also help. Coming back in here, I noticed that was a little bit too efficient. Let's close this out. You should, we're using MechJeb, and so for the MechJeb will work without avionics. How realistic you want to play, and within the confines of the game, if you're flying by hand, avionics doesn't, your controls don't work unless you have the proper amount of avionics. So you need to come in here and add a second procedural avionics to control your third stage. And so you want to come in here, put that to roughly 40 tons, and then bring up the avionics. And you'll notice here that it supports 4.43 tons, and I ended up at 45. So I need to add just a little bit more. There we go. Our avionics are sufficient, and we're good to go. So don't forget that part, especially if you're flying by hand, because your controls are not going to work. So, and that also adds battery, so you're not draining off this main battery. I have noticed a lot of other YouTubers as well. They get it up in the air and they're like, "Oh, I'm out of battery." If you have this split avionics, that seems for me to solve that issue, so that you don't run into needing to add additional batteries, and also the weight is better distributed, so that you can drop off this big heavy avionics core when you're done with it. So this one weighs almost a ton, yeah, 0.8 tons, and this one is only 90 kilograms. If you try to make this as big enough to control the entire rocket, then you have all this dead weight. So by doing this, it splits it up, and then you lose that dead weight when you lose the rocket that was the heavy part. Alright, now to the launch pad. Alright, so we're on the launch pad, and we're ready to launch. This is the one that I created. We got some extra stuff we don't need. You don't need the Septron motor and that. But let's go through. We're going to use MechJeb. Before we get started, I'll go ahead and show you those settings I have set. Big ones here is I've got the periop set to 160. AppWeb set to 0. When I tried to set this to anything other than 0, it had some problems with the flight. You will need to set your orbital inclination to 28.6, and then all the rest of these are set to their stock configuration. So, right, turn that off. Okay, so ready to launch. I like to turn on RCS to start with because I always forget, and we'll go ahead and hit engage. Mouse out here because that first initial is pretty loud, and up we go. So because I add the winglets, it is pretty stable, and I can go 4x and even be red for the time, and it seems to do okay and not fall off course or anything. So feel free to do whatever works best for you. If you decide to go without fins, you may have to make sure that you don't get any anomalies and just stay with the slower speed for warp. Okay, we're going to let it take over the first stage here. The important stuff we need here though from the status is this coast time. And we're going to go ahead and we'll use that as well for our planning. Okay, so it is done. That and our coast time is right here. So we're going to go ahead and disengage, and in 20 seconds we'll go ahead and fire the next engine. I've had MechJeb try and throttle down or shut off this engine where we only have one ignition. That's not going to work for us. Okay, so a minute 50. There we go. So throttle up first. That should turn on your RCS, and then fire off the engine. You want to make sure that this says very stable before you do that. Okay, so you're good to go. It should stay pretty stable, but if you find that it is veering off on you, then go ahead and go to surface velocity. And we're also going to use this to help control and guide us. So if you find that you undershoot your apoapse height, then you need to pitch up just a little bit. If you find that you overshoot it, pitch down. So let's go ahead and get this going. We're also in space generally by this point. No, I'm a little short, but if you find that you're in space, then you can hold down Alt as well to do time warp. Alright, I'm going to pitch down just a little bit because we're well above our 160. I'm going to use the rest of the rocket to try and push out our periaps here. Okay, so there we go. We're done with the first stage. So I'm going to go ahead and let go of our second stage. Maybe, computer's thinking really hard there. And we're going to get as close to the apoapse time as possible. So if you throttle down your engine like I did in the design, you have a little bit more leeway. If you did not, you're going to want to shoot right at it. So there was 5 seconds, and there we go. Okay, so there we have a periaps now of 160. We have an apoapse height of 2 million kilometers, and you are in orbit. At this point, you just need to warp around till you find some science that you can transmit back, and you're good to go. So we'll drop out time warp, we'll warp forward. Oh, I zipped over that little biome. So to help you if you do that, it came back. You can turn this to globally on for warp settings, and that will drop you out of warp. So here we are in the tropics. I will transmit. Now this is the problem I ran into. I didn't add antennas to this, and for whatever reason, when I go to transmit, it's, no usable comm devices on this. So you do need to add those antennas. You should hopefully be able to still make it to, well, you've seen, we made it to orbit without the antennas, but completing the science portion of this, you do have to have those antennas. I'm going to see if I have enough battery to get to where I can transmit that experiment. No, it's not going to let me at all. So, alright, well, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the build process and going over a little bit of MechJeb. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment and or get a hold of me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to answer those for you. As always, have a great day.